Okay, yeah, then we can start. I guess you all have already read what this session is about. Yeah, then I say, yeah, welcome to my session. In case of questions, raise your hands and ask. I have also some questions. Who of you is developer? Designer? Something else?
No, I'm not doing design at the moment. In the meantime, I'm doing strategy, concept, and stuff like that. I have designers, and I did it before.
Who of you has something to do with accessibility at the moment, or who is aware of it? Everyone, okay. Then let's see if I can tell you something new. Yeah, a little bit about my background. Guess most of you know me already from my presentation Drupal doing video in Berlin. Last time it was 2011. That was the time I stepped into the Drupal universe, because at this time I lived in Munich, and the Munich Drupal scene was really strong. And yeah, I started with the Drupal 6, then yeah, very early stepped into Drupal 7, which also was my last major Drupal version I personally used. And I was able to do everything on my own. Because, yeah, the major reason why exclusion happens is when we develop solutions from our own perspective. And in the case of Drupal, unfortunately, there was, the point where it got very technically and very complicated for a person like me who likes user interfaces. And then, yeah, I already failed trying installing Drupal, installing modules with Composer, command line. I just had the experience of trying it with the latest version 10 and followed the guidelines. Didn't work on Windows. It worked on Mac. But yeah, in the end, super complicated. And what was always a pain in Drupal, keeping it up to date. I guess everybody knows. If maybe with command line magic, that's easier, but if you're doing it with the way I was used to, it was fucking complicated. And that's why I got a little bit out of the active universe, let's say it like this. I always kept on working with Drupal, but more as a content editor when doing the accessibility documentation of a design system in an organization which uses Drupal a lot, also version 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe soon 11. But here I had, luckily, technicians who did all the stuff. And I just cared about the accessibility of the design system. Unfortunately, even the documentation system with Drupal was not fully accessible, because, yeah, there's always something more important. That's also the major reason why accessibility fails. Is everybody aware of the these figures from Microsoft? Everybody? No. Okay. Most people, when talking about accessibility, they think of blind users. The company I work in or for mostly, we do not have blind users. Why should we care? And accessibility is much more than serving solutions for blind people. And Microsoft started to illustrate this, also the different disabilities where you have, of course, vision, hearing, speaking, voice. Everybody, I guess, knows Alexa. It's still at the very beginning that we can interact with voice interfaces. But that computers can understand us or execute also in two ways, you need a technical standard. So that, e.g., a voice command software can read what's on the screen or on the web page, can identify buttons or other interaction elements. And for this, you need the standards. And if you do not stick to these standards, they're the cut and the software just does not work. And of course, this affects mainly screen readers, but also people who are depending on keyboard for usage. And in the company where I worked, they work 8 hours or longer a day with special software just made for the purpose. And nobody wants to use the mouse all the time for 8 hours a day. So they had a lot of keyboard users and also users who used Dragon in this case to make voice commands to the software. They even wrote a special software, though you can customize voice commands, which are then mapped to keyboard shortcuts and can be executed. And what then is essential, that you have keyboard support for all the software, which is a very important foundation also for accessibility. Why I proposed this session is, I still have one client with a Drupal 7 website, and everybody knows end of support is coming soon. So I had to decide what to do. Though I had a little sneak peek again in the Drupal universe and found out backdrop, how Drupal currently is shaping, and then there was this announcement of Stashot, where Dries announced everything I asked him for 10 years ago in Munich.
That's good.
At this point, it was more about the medium module, because my opinion was, if you want more people, media management is the essential feature. And if this is as bad as it is, nobody will adapt Drupal. And I think it's very important to have a good media management. Meanwhile, they adapted a lot of other things like the drag and drop editor and what other CMS also offered by default, which is maybe not the best thing for accessibility. We will see. And that was the main reason why I then said, okay, I am open for a new challenge, and I have some accessibility knowledge. I will try to support and help And yeah, just a few persons are not enough. We need much more, especially when it comes to giving feedback and testing. Because yeah, the Drupal CMS, of course, it has a core, but it also has several contributed modules. And for me, coming back, having missed a lot of what happened in the Drupal universe, and then okay, we need to improve accessibility. And I say, okay, yeah, I'm in. But if you want to improve accessibility, you need to know what issues do exist. Unfortunately, yeah, especially by the contributed modules or additional third-party modules, it's rarely to find the status of the module. And if you look in other CMS environments, it's the same. The core and the core contributors are very aware of accessibility and they take really good care of the essential things, but if you're adding one wrong third-party module, you can kill everything. E.g., imagine you have an additional module that's rewriting the front-end markup in a not accessible way, then yeah, the end result is a not accessible product. And what I have missed most is that on no module page, or nearly no module page, there's any documentation about the status of the accessibility of the module. I would even apply for, please let me filter for modules which have at least the required level of accessibility, e.g. for government usage. The governments are currently organizations, institutions who should deliver accessible solutions by default, as also document this in their solutions with a so-called accessibility statement. Unfortunately, the reality is this statement is most of the time a statement for not being accessible at all. And yeah, that's why there's support needed from the community. And also what I've learned in the company I worked for, and where I spent most of my time fixing the top 10 issues, where I like to say issues that should not exist, because they are very easy to identify and they are also very easy to fix. And the earlier you detect this, ideally during development, the easier is it to fix. What most companies do wrong is they make an accessibility test short before launch, or worse, after launch. And then you have the problem that if you've done a lot wrong, it's like starting again from scratch. And that is very expensive. So the final result is you don't fix it. Because if you have launched your project, you also have already used all your budget. And if you do not, it's a method called shift left, that you start very, very early. You do it constantly, check accessibility and fix immediately. all your issues will get out of control if you are waiting and there's something more important. Also, a lot of companies try to reinvent the wheel. There exist good components you could already use, or in the case I was working, the recommendation of the expert was you have a very, very special requirement. You should start building them from scratch to have full control. A lot of companies said, like this one also, but we want fast results. Fast results means for the managers, we want to see something on the screen. That's why we take a third-party library. If you take a third-party library or e.g. a third-party module, you should test the accessibility before you use it. If you start building with it and then at some point you detect, oh, we need to make this accessible, you can run into several problems. A, you do not have access to change this thing. B, if you can change it because it's open source, the bug fix goes to the latest version. If you're maybe behind because you're a very big organization that does not move that fast as the outside world, yeah, you can fix it, but you will never get the fix into your products if you do not use the latest version. And in the case of this organization, in the end, it was a difference of 2 years. They had a definition of long-term support, which is, yeah, let's say, common for government organization, and from ancient desktop times, their definition was long-term support is 10 to 15 years. For the Google Angular team, it's 12 months. The good news in general is everybody can test accessibility, because the #1 tool to test accessibility is your browser. The #2 tools to test are browser extensions that can help you. Also, if you're a developer, your IDE hopefully has some extensions to also already test accessibility while you're developing. The bad news is all these automated tools only detect about 30 to 40% of the issues. The more complicated your user interface is, the less issues they detect. And complicated, I would say, is maybe a editor environment of a content management system. And the other thing with the tests, if you stick to the, let's say, legal or recommended criteria and rules, they are quite complicated, especially in Germany. If you read the legal requirements for, e.g., government institutions or the upcoming laws, not even the experts know what this exactly should mean. Who's aware of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines? Everyone? Who's aware of the BIT-V, the German adaptation? Nope. Basically, that's the same, but in German. Who's aware of the European Accessibility Act? Also, okay. Who knows EN3? 01549. That is what's coming up next year. And it's coming up for companies. So with the European Accessibility Act, the European norm gets into action by June 2025, and then a majority of companies need to deliver accessible digital services, especially in the area of e-commerce. And the short version, I would say, EN is very equal to WCAG 2.1 AA. It will be updated in the beginning, hopefully 2026, to WCAG 2.2 AA. But it has some additional requirements, focusing especially on desktop software and apps. These requirements are also, the good news is, very similar to WCAG. Because for desktop software or apps, there does not exist any other framework you could stick to. The WCAG was the best that was present at this time, and they adapted it to fit, e.g., apps, so that the apps are getting more accessible, and especially in the area of digital health, this is very important for the users. And okay, now I make a quick switch because, okay, we Germans are maybe not good in realizing accessibility, but we are very good in defining what to test. That was a funded project, and the good news is also you can easily translate it with, e.g., Google Translate. And what you have here, you have all these checkpoints, but besides the checkpoints, I take my favorite one, which is for software, and it's called user preferences. Now the good question is, how can I translate it? Where's my Google Translate?
It recommends to translate to Deutsch once again.
I think the problem is that I disable translate German.
Yeah, you will have to
Never over translation.
Your language of the browser should be probably the default one, the English one, at least for now.
And let's see.
Isn't there like a language switcher on the right-hand side? If you were going to say that as well.
That's German, but not a button or.
Use the three dots in the top right corner once again. There is a translate option, a little bit up, up.
Translate here. Detected language. German. Never translates the site. Is not. Page is not in detected language. I want English.
It detects German as
Oh, come on. Okay, let's see. Translate.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Okay, though. We have test sub 11.7. Okay, custom settings. This for. No.
You can just,
okay.
use
I give the short version. What this test offers is they really define in detail what has to be tested, why, how, and also give related information if available. And in this case, it's from the EN. User preferences, where web app is not designed to be isolated from its platform and provides a user interface. That user interface shall follow the values of the user preferences for platform settings for units of measurement, color, contrast, font type, font size, and focus cursor, except where they are overridden by the user. Any idea what this means?
No way. The second question is why it's in English, because it's the German version.
Now, this is a reference to the original EN, which is in English. That's why the English part is from the original EN. And yeah, here's a note. For web content, the underlying platform is the user agent. The user agent is browser. So typically this would say the user must be able to adapt font size. Okay, we know this. Font type. Contrast. And units of measurement is also more clear. It's adaptive design. And yes, you need to use relative units so a user can scale and adapt the font size. But when it comes to color, what does this mean? E.g., one of the discussions is, will dark mode be mandatory? In the area of apps, it's normal, but not for websites. And also it would have major implications for websites if you have not set up a good design system before. So nobody exactly knows. I have some feedback, e.g. directly from EU, which they say, okay, we don't go for dark mode as mandatory because there are so many other issues that are more important to fix. But in the end, the decision will be made by the courts if it goes into law fights. And yeah, keep an eye on this. Nobody knows what really will happen in the next 6 months and what then they really decide. An update is already in preparation, which then will also adapt to WCAG 2.2, but this will not come before 2026. But if you're now working on stuff, you're good to be advised already considering the next and upcoming version, if possible. Back to the good news, especially for the developer. Maybe some of you have already seen this or are maybe even using this. That Storybook has an accessibility checker built in. Anybody using it? Anybody fixing issues that this thing shows?
Well, as you said, not only this, you have to use a combination of tools if you want to go 100%. So
But
it's just part of the issue.
for me as an accessibility expert, I would say if I look at this, I do not want to see any violation. Because, hey, developer, it says violation. It gives you information how to fix it. Why should I remind you that there are issues? And okay, one violation would be Very nice, but mainly you have a lot of violations and nobody cares. So the most important thing for bringing accessibility on the road is you need to have a defined person who takes care. Normally you would say, yes, accessibility is everyone's job, but if there's no name, nobody really feels responsible. You all know WCAG already, so I don't think I need to explain lots of stuff here. For the designers and maybe people who are not that aware, there are some two very exciting new projects where you can promote accessibility. This is the WCAG map, and these are also the WCAG 2.2 card decks. I highly can recommend this for the promotion. Okay, I guess everybody from you in the room already knows that WCAG is not something innovative, and especially it's not something new. The version 1 has its 25th anniversary this year. Also essential keyboard access, which is more or less the foundation for screen reader usage, very important for other assistive technologies coming up. And the focus indicator is also a major thing, which will be a required feature. No focus traps, and visible focus. And that's, together with keyboard access, I think these are the biggest challenges at the moment for most websites, because they just missed it. And most developers love their diffs and spans. Maybe they had a tab index to it, so you can focus it. But if there's no role, a screen reader has still his challenges when using it. And some bad news, which mainly is the critical reason why so many accessibility initiatives and attempts fail. There exist too many barriers which prevent you from doing your job, because there's always something more important. Most of the time it's a totally unrequired, unnecessary feature a manager has seen. Oh, Apple has now made this, I want this too. Without questioning, does it make sense? Do your users really need this? And does it has any return of investment if we spend 2 weeks on developing this, a feature that nobody uses? Unfortunately, this happened a lot. So what can we do? What helps? I guess most in the room already know this, and you need to consider accessibility right from the beginning in the planning phase and all the time. Not just, it's not a fix you can apply once and then it's done. You also, if you have introduced accessibility, you also need to keep it alive. And often that happens. The expert comes, fixes it with a developer. 3 months later, the component gets an update and all the work is gone. So planning is really the most essential thing. A friend of mine I worked with said once, weeks of coding can save us hours of planning. And that happens so often. That's why communication between all the involved parties is so essential, especially during the design phase. Include your developers. because changes in the design are easy to make and can have a major impact on the efforts you need in the development. A small design change can save you weeks of coding. And yeah, finally, you need to go for accessibility first. If there's always something more important, you will never manage it. And to promote also, it helps to, especially the stakeholder, product manager, you need to have on board. If they do not support this, forget it. Then it's more or less a mission impossible. That the accessibility is a benefit for all the users. And the curb cut effect is a very good example, because it's not only for the people in wheelchairs, you have also people with bikes carrying luggage. And the same is with accessibility. If you have a good UX, good design, easy to understand, easy to use, it's also good for more revenue, because people can do stuff faster. And if it's easier for them, they may do it also more often. One thing I tried, which works very good, if you want to sell accessibility, you mainly fail. But if you put it into a nice package, especially with search engine optimization and performance, you have much better chances to bring it into production. Because this is something the stakeholders can understand much better. And I always say high quality products, are accessible by default. And if the code also is easy to read, the markup in the browser is small and not especially in the Drupal world, I spend a lot of time fixing I like to say it, call it div sasters. Because you have, 500 lines of divs and then 2 lines of the code you really need. And that is a fear I have with the drag and drop interface, that this will, no, it cannot get worse. It's already worse, not only in Drupal, in so many other environments. And the biggest challenge for the developers, or in general, is often this handoff. I'm not sure why, but in Germany it's still the tradition. So the designer does the design, and when he has finished, he takes his package or sends a Figma link to the developer. And then they never talk to each other again. And what do you think, you know it already, I say it to the designers, what do you think is the biggest barrier for a developer? Your design tool, Figma. Because, of course Figma promotes, do your annotations in Figma. I think, no, ask your developer what they want and what they need. And ideally, you do not have this handoff. Designers should, support the developer in testing, as also in the end verify that the delivery is accessible as required and defined in the beginning. And that is what I hope for, is as you as a developer, check your modules or ask for support, that people support you on testing. so that you can focus on fixing the issues, which e.g. I unfortunately can't because I'm not a developer. What I can do is testing, HTML, CSS, and UX design, but not development. Thank you. And now don't miss the next session, because there is maybe more advice how we can go on.